When the league tried to brush off the body check incident involving Caitlin Clark, it underestimated the power of composure. While officials fumbled with denials and PR spin, Clark remained silent, focused, unwavering, unshaken. That silence became its own form of protest, echoing louder than any press conference or apology ever could. As outrage spread across social media and sponsors began to pressure the commissioner's office, the narrative turned.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
What was meant to be hidden became headline news, and what was meant to protect the league exposed its deepest flaws. Clark's quiet endurance reshaped the entire conversation around fairness and integrity in women's basketball. Fans saw authenticity where the league offered avoidance, and that contrast sparked something far bigger than a single controversy. The WNBA's eventual climb down and policy changes weren't just acts of correction. They were confessions of failure. Clark's win wasn't about personal vindication. It was about transforming vulnerability into influence. In that calm refusal to play the PR game, she reminded everyone that real strength doesn't shout. It stands firm and waits for truth to catch up. It was the kind of moment that forces a league to show its true colors. Caitlin Clark was violently body-checked during a WNBA game, a hit so aggressive it instantly set social media on fire. There was no mistaking it. It wasn't a casual foul. It wasn't routine contact. It was an assault, and everyone knew it. Everyone except the WNBA. Instead of stepping up with accountability, the league froze. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and her PR team seemed to make a conscious choice to say less, do less, and hope the news cycle would move on. No immediate disciplinary action. No real statement condemning the move. Just silence, strategic, calculated, and ultimately self-destructive. But the silence didn't make the issue go away. It made it louder. The internet erupted. Fans flooded comment sections and forums demanding justice. Prominent media voices, including Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith, openly questioned how the league could look the other way while one of its most valuable stars was left vulnerable. The criticism wasn't just loud, it was relentless. And in the center of it all, Caitlin Clark, unshaken, unbothered, silent. She didn't post cryptic messages. She didn't fire back in interviews. She stayed focused, professional, and deadly on the court. Her restraint turned into a statement louder than any press release. While the league scrambled behind the scenes, Clark kept showing up and showing out. Game after game, she performed like nothing had happened, even though everyone knew it had. That's what flipped the script. Because in her silence, Clark became a mirror, one that reflected everything the WNBA tried to bury. Her refusal to spiral into drama made it even harder for the league to justify doing nothing. And the public noticed. The lack of league accountability clashed violently with Clark's professionalism, and the gap between the two became a gaping wound. This wasn't just about one bad foul. This was about how the league protects, or fails to protect, its stars, how it responds to violence, how it handles crisis, and most of all, how it treats the players who carry the league's reputation. Clark had become the face of the WNBA, the ratings boost, the jersey seller, the headline maker. And yet, when she was blatantly targeted in front of millions, the league's top leadership opted for damage control instead of doing what was right. It didn't work. Behind the scenes, brands were paying attention. Nike, Gatorade, endorsement giants that don't play games when it comes to image and integrity. And when the league's inaction began to bleed into sponsorship territory, the pressure got real. Quiet conversations turned into not-so-quiet ultimatums. If the WNBA couldn't guarantee player safety, if it couldn't act with integrity in the face of obvious misconduct, then those sponsorship dollars were at risk. That's when things finally started moving. The league, under mounting pressure, released a vague acknowledgement. Then came talks of rule changes, conduct revisions, and policy reviews. It all felt late and entirely reactive, because by the time the WNBA responded publicly, fans, media, and sponsors had already made up their minds. The league had failed its moment. And Clark? She didn't need to say anything. Her game was the response. With every pass, every shot, every win, she continued to dominate without ever needing to enter the drama. That's what made the entire situation even more frustrating and even more powerful. While the league hesitated, she rose. The assault wasn't just a physical hit. It was a litmus test. And Clark passed it with calm precision, while the WNBA leadership floundered in slow-motion crisis mode. The moment revealed more than just a PR failure. It exposed something deeper, an outdated, reactive system clinging to old playbooks in a world that now demands transparency, speed, and accountability. Public trust took a hit, and the fans didn't forget. There was a shift happening. You could feel it. Fans no longer saw the league office as the final authority. The real power was moving into the hands of the people who watch, share, and shape the narrative online. Into the voices of media who held the league accountable when it refused to hold itself accountable. Into the influence of sponsors who threatened to walk if things didn't change. Clark's situation forced the WNBA to see the game differently. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about integrity. And while the league struggled to keep up, Clark's calm strength set a new standard. She became a symbol, not just of athletic excellence, but of what happens when professionalism outshines power. And that's where the power shift happened. It wasn't loud. It wasn't announced in a press release, but it was felt. The fans knew they had leverage now. Players knew their voices and reputations mattered more than ever. And the WNBA had to wake up to the reality that they couldn't operate from the top down anymore, not without consequence. Every reform that came after was a direct result of the backlash. The conduct policy updates, fan pressure, the safety standards, sponsor pressure, the revised public messaging, media pressure. The WNBA didn't lead those changes. It was dragged into them, forced to adapt by a storm of public outcry, commercial interest, and the undeniable grace of a player who said nothing and still won. Because in staying silent, Clark didn't disappear. She became impossible to ignore. She turned what could have been a short-lived scandal into a reckoning. And she did it without ever needing to play the victim. She didn't demand the spotlight. The spotlight followed her. Because people recognized the imbalance. They saw the league's failure, and they responded with support. For her, not them. That's why this moment matters. It marks a shift in how power operates in sports. Athletes are no longer just entertainers. They're voices, leaders, and catalysts for cultural change. And Clark's unshakable poise in the middle of controversy made her the blueprint. Fans rallied. Sponsors took sides. And the WNBA? It finally learned that silence can cost more than any bad call on the court. Clark walked through all of this without raising her voice. And in doing so, she reminded the league, and everyone watching, what true leadership looks like. She didn't flinch. She didn't fold. She just kept playing. That quiet strength became the most powerful thing in the entire situation. It shifted control away from PR offices and back into the hands of the people who actually keep the game alive, players and fans. The WNBA is now operating under a new kind of scrutiny. It's no longer enough to issue statements when the heat turns up. Accountability is expected before the backlash, not after. And that expectation, it's here to stay. Clark's impact isn't just athletic. It's institutional. She's the reason policies were rewritten. She's the reason media demanded more. She's the reason fans saw behind the curtain and didn't like what they saw. And she never had to say a word. That's the real win. Not just for her, but for the future of the sport. If you followed this story all the way through, you know how big it really was. It wasn't a one-game controversy. It was a cultural turning point. And the next time a league tries to sweep something under the rug, they'll remember what happened when they tried to do it to Caitlin Clark. Let us know what you think. Did the WNBA wait too long to act? Was Clark's silence more powerful than anything she could have said out loud? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you think real leadership means showing up before the outrage. And subscribe if you want more no-spin breakdowns of the biggest shakeups in sports. We're keeping the spotlight on the stories that matter, because someone has to. There's something almost cinematic about how the whole Caitlin Clark situation unfolded. The hit, the silence, the storm, and then the calm, composed figure at the center of it all. Still playing, still dominating, still refusing to take the bait. While the WNBA scrambled to figure out how to contain the backlash, Clark didn't say a single controversial word. No interviews designed to spin the moment. No cryptic posts. Just basketball. And that ended up saying everything the league couldn't. It's rare to see a moment in sports where the quietest person in the room becomes the loudest presence in the story. But that's exactly what happened. Clark didn't just navigate the controversy. She owned it by doing absolutely nothing performative. That strategic silence turned into a full-blown cultural statement. And the league? It was stuck playing defense, not on the court, but in the media, with the fans, and with its own partners. This wasn't a hard one. An aggressive hit. On your star player. With a massive social media following already pointing fingers. And your response is vague damage control and backroom PR? That's not crisis management. That's denial. The hit itself was the spark, but what followed was a controlled burn that exposed everything under the surface. Fans weren't just mad about the incident. They were angry about what it represented. A league that marketed itself around stars, empowerment, and athletic integrity couldn't seem to protect the very person carrying its banner. And the clock started ticking. Every day that passed without real disciplinary action made things worse. Every minute of silence from leadership widened the gap between fans and the institution. And every highlight reel featuring Clark on the court after that moment only added to the contrast. She was doing her job. The league was not. By the time the league issued a half-hearted response and began making internal adjustments, the public narrative had already moved on. And not in a good way. The story was no longer what happened to Caitlin Clark. It became, why didn't the WNBA protect her? And that's the kind of question that leaves a permanent dent in reputation. This moment wasn't just about Clark. It was about how systems respond when tested. And the WNBA got tested hard and failed. Their refusal to address the incident head-on made them look small in comparison to the maturity of the person at the center of the storm. Let's talk about power. Before this, the power structure was predictable. The league makes decisions, the players follow, the fans react. But not anymore. This controversy flipped the script. Fans were the first to demand action. Media followed. Sponsors stepped in. And the league only acted when it couldn't afford not to. That's not control. That's crisis reaction. And it shows just how fragile institutional power is when public opinion shifts. Meanwhile, Clark just kept winning. On the court and in the culture. The silence that once seemed like passivity became a symbol of strength. While everyone else was scrambling for control of the story, Clark already had it by refusing to play the PR game. It's almost brutal in how simple it is. The league made the wrong call, and the person they failed to protect came out stronger. Not because the system supported her, but because she proved she didn't need it. That's where the Real fallout lies. The WNBA has now been publicly reminded that stars like Clark are the brand. They're not just employees, they're the narrative. Without them, there's no visibility, no ratings bump, no surge in fan interest. And when you treat that kind of player like a replaceable part, people notice. The sponsors definitely noticed. Nike and Gatorade weren't just handing out branding deals because Clark looked good on a billboard. They were investing in someone who was pulling attention to women's basketball in a way no one had in years. Her presence meant money, visibility, growth. So when the league's inactions started threatening that investment, that's when the real pressure dropped. Not from fans, not from Twitter threads, from the people holding the checkbooks. And that's what ultimately forced the WNBA to change its tune. Revised rules, a new approach to player conduct, policies that should have been in place already, all rolled out not because the league saw the light, but because they saw the numbers. It's a reminder that in professional sports, morality often comes second to money. The sad part? It could have been both. The league had every opportunity to lead with integrity and still protect its business interests. But they chose the route of avoidance, and it cost them trust. Trust is a currency, and they spent a lot of it. Caitlin Clark didn't have to break down in interviews or call for change. She just had to keep doing her job, and the world did the rest. Her performance was the protest. Every point she scored after the hit became a reminder that she was still here, still working, still dominating, while the league hesitated. That's why this moment resonates. It's not just about the incident. It's about what it revealed. The gap between what a league says it values and how it actually behaves when the spotlight gets hot. The way institutions are quick to capitalize on star power, but slower to defend the humans behind it. Clark became the silent center of a movement she never asked for. And now, whether she wanted to or not, she's reshaping how fans and athletes view accountability in sports. She exposed the fragility of the old power dynamics. Because once fans realize they have influence, and once players realize they can demand better, the league has to listen. Not because they want to, but because they have to. That's the new reality. And the WNBA is going to be dealing with the fallout from this for a long time. Because this wasn't just a story about a foul. It was a case study in public trust, media pressure, and institutional reckoning. And it proved one thing. The power now lies with the voices outside the boardroom. The fans who speak up, the media who ask questions, the sponsors who walk the line between profit and principles, and the players who perform with excellence while leadership fumbles basic responsibility. Caitlin Clark's rise was never supposed to be about drama. But when the drama came for her, she didn't flinch. And in doing so, she set a new standard for what it means to lead in silence. The question now is whether the league can rise to meet that standard. Can it learn from this moment? Can it rebuild trust? Can it prove that it values players as people, not just assets? We'll see. But what's clear is that things have changed. The curtain's been pulled back. Fans now know what silence really looks like when it comes from the top. And Clark's refusal to be pulled into the mud just made that silence even more damning. She played through it, carried herself with grace, and still came out on top. And now, the WNBA has no choice but to follow her lead or risk getting left behind. You'd think, after all this, the WNBA might have learned its lesson. That when you fumble a moment this big, when you fail your biggest star this publicly, you tighten things up. You come back with clarity, with purpose, with leadership. But no, the response didn't match the moment. Not even close. Instead of owning the mistake and rebuilding trust, the league opted for minimalism. A few procedural tweaks. A statement that read like it was written in a legal office. Nothing direct. Nothing personal. Nothing that really addressed what went down. And that's the part that stuck with people. Because if you can't say Caitlin Clark's name when she's the reason the entire sports world is talking about your league, what can you say? If you can't protect your highest profile player from blatant aggression, or at least publicly condemn it when it happens, what message are you sending to every other athlete on your roster? It's not just about Clark anymore. It's about precedent. And the precedent this set is chilling. Players now know that even if you're the face of the league, even if you bring in the crowds and spike viewership numbers and carry the brand, your safety isn't guaranteed. Your dignity isn't automatically defended. Your league might just let you take the hit and say nothing. That's why fans didn't move on. That's why the media kept covering it. Because silence isn't neutral, it's a stance. And in this case, it was the wrong one. Caitlin Clark, through all of this, kept doing what the league failed to do. She stayed composed. She showed up. She kept the game at the center. But make no mistake, she saw everything. The silence, the media frenzy, the way her supporters had to step in because the league wouldn't. And yet, she didn't feed into the outrage. She didn't give the WNBA an easy out by playing into the drama. Her restraint forced the league to face the pressure from everyone except her. And that pressure didn't let up. Because it wasn't just about one bad call or one hard foul. It was about how the system responds when it's challenged. And how slow, outdated responses feel offensive in a modern media climate where fans demand and expect transparency. What this exposed, more than anything, was a disconnect between the WNBA's leadership and its audience, between the way the league wants to be seen and the way it actually operates. They promote empowerment, resilience, and player-first values. But when it mattered most, those values evaporated. And Clark's silent strength made that gap impossible to ignore. The impact was real. The fallout pushed sponsors to reevaluate their association with the league. It forced emergency meetings. It shifted how future incidents will be handled. And it set a tone that won't be easy to walk back. Caitlin Clark's role in this goes beyond performance now. She became a symbol, not because she asked to be, but because the league's failure made her one. She didn't just rise above the noise. She became the reason the noise got louder. And even though she didn't speak up publicly, her actions said everything. I'll let my game speak for me. I'll let the people decide what this moment means. I'll stay focused. You figure out the rest. That approach, measured, focused, powerful, made her even more magnetic, even more respected. And it only underscored how much the league missed the mark by not standing beside her when it counted. So now we're here. The incident is over. The headlines have started to cool, but the message lingers. And that message is this: you can't ignore your way out of accountability anymore. Not when fans have voices. Not when sponsors have leverage. Not when players like Caitlin Clark refuse to play into the outrage cycle and still come out stronger. She didn't need the league's protection to win this. She had the people. She had the proof. And she had the professionalism. That's what leadership really looks like. Let us know how you see it. Should the league have spoken up faster? Did Clark's silence hit harder than a public statement ever could? Comment below. Hit that like button if you think stars deserve better. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next power shift, PR mess, or sports drama that sets the internet on fire. Because this story wasn't just about one player. It was about how the whole system reacts when the spotlight turns hot. And the system got exposed.